Hey guys, what's up? Finch here. Today we're going to be going over my first two games for the National Dex World Cup of Pokemon. I'm on Team US Northeast plus South. They grouped the two regions. I'm from Northeast, so makes sense I'm playing for them. And they got me in National Dex Overused, so I'm playing the tier that a lot of people have enjoyed seeing on YouTube from people like Blunder and Joey. I've done pretty well in National Dex so far. In the National Dex Premier League, I went undefeated. As you guys might recall, I uploaded those games in my channel, and now I'm back in business. I'm going to give you guys my Week 1 and 2 games. So we can start with the more recent of the two. My Week 2 game against Segubu Royale. Now, Segubu is a really good player, even underrated. He's done well in tournaments like OLT before. He made it far into the playoffs. He really does great in just a number of different tiers, and I knew I had my work cut out for me here, and he obviously was using a pretty strong team here. He had Cinderace, Kartana, Landorus, really offensive Pokemon, and some great pivots like Slowbro and Slowking Galar, and also Blissey in the back. I really liked his team, and I knew I'd have my work cut out for me, but I was able to identify some win paths right off the bat. I knew he was pretty known for using stallier and bulkier teams, so I actually wanted to use a team that had a couple of things going for it. First off, I wanted to have enough longevity to where he couldn't really break me with stall as long as I played the game in a smart fashion. So having the combination of Gliscor with Poison Heal, Toxic Regenerator, and Clefairy with Magic Guard meant I could kind of switch around and find my openings and take up a lot of turns and even potentially force a tie if he would use a stall team. So I didn't really have to worry so much about using that, and then I could go on to the offensive with my other Pokemon. Having Swords Dance Landorus gave me a win condition. Running Z-Move on a Trapping Heatran set gave me a lot of openings, and also having things like Knockoff and Toxic in my Zero Aura forced potential item displacement or status spread as well. Mega Latias was more of a glue Pokemon. Admittedly, I was a bit fearful of running it and facing a Pursuit user like Mega Tyranitar, but that's just always the risk you get with running it. In other matchups, it looks pretty great, and this one's similar. It actually is Ice Beam plus Psyshock with Roost and Defog, so it was able to pretty much blank hazards from certain setters, and I like that dynamic. Looking a bit more into this match in particular, he didn't have great answers to Swords Dance on Gliscor, unless he was potentially Ice Beam Slowbro, I guess. Even that, you could potentially PP stall Ice Beam or force yourself status on it with Toxapex or Heatran if it has it, or Zera Aura if he lets it happen, or even just whittle it down. And I felt that was a good path. I also felt like I could do a bit of work with my Clefable, but I'll have to wait and see. He does have Cinderace and Kartana plus Teleport, so that kind of shuts it down in the short haul. I'd really have to try and force progress on both those Pokemon and then maybe see. But in the meantime, I also felt like I could force the issue with Heatran. It kind of forced him to go to Slowking Galar or the Blissey, and I knew I could take advantage of both those entering, specifically with my Gliscor. Overall, I didn't think I had a ton of options of breaking his team, but I also felt like he didn't really pressure me a ton immediately either. Cinderace, I was able to check with both Gliscor and Toxapex. Landorus T, okay, some Z-move Landorus Ts were actually kind of threatening to me, but looking at his team, I knew it probably wasn't the Z user. I thought it was Kartana right off the bat, because Scarf Kartana doesn't make much sense in this, Band Kartana doesn't make much sense in this. I feel like those sets are a bit more support reliant, but Swords Dance plus Z Kartana is a great breaker to open holes for things like Cinderace and Landorus T, and that definitely made the most sense to me. So kind of intuitively speaking, I was able to pencil it in the preview, and that definitely gave me some incentive to know what to play around and why to play around it, if that makes sense. Anyway, I knew Blissey was more of just a pivot alongside Slowbro and Slowking, so I wasn't super worried about them, but admittedly, the wrong Slowking Galar set can get out of hand pretty quickly, so I knew I had to be careful with how I let things take status and positioning myself overall. Going into going into the game though, let's go ahead and proceed to that. I actually led off with my Zero Aura, and I'm like, okay, right off the bat, this is probably Rocks, because I didn't think he'd be Rocks on the Blissey. Looking at his team, Blissey kind of needs to be Toxic or Thunderwave potentially for things like Volcarona, which you don't really want to trust Cinderace for in the long haul. And since it's probably going to be Rock Slanders T, that can't even like Revenge Kill Slow or Volk either. So at this point, I'm thinking, if this is Rock Slando T, then that kind of makes it awkward, because it sort of has to be Scarf Kartana. And Scarf Kartana doesn't really make a ton of sense. This team doesn't have support like Magnezone or Rocky Helmet Guard Jump to chip things down and potentially put them into range. And I kind of kept thinking about this. I'm like, it's not Z-Lando with rocks that tells him for the pace. Maybe it's bulky rocks with no Scarf, or maybe it's the Scarf Landorus T and Rocks Blissey. It turned out, as I decided to stay in for Knock on turn 1, because there's no chance he ever Earthquakes with Gliscor and Latias there. It's always U-turn if you're Scarf, or Rocks if you have it. So I knock, and it turns out that not only is he Rock, but he's also Scarf, and him losing the Scarf there actually was pretty good for him, because he didn't need it a lot, and changing up moves makes it more threatening, but thankfully I go for the same reason turn. Do I break him to stay in, and just go for a U-turn, because, again, Latias and Gliscor and Clef. Even maybe a knockoff in his end would make sense if he has it, but Rock plus Knock Scarf seems unlikely. So either way, I go for the Toxic, knowing getting this triple is important as it can't spam Intimidating Gliscor. It opens up the game later for Zero Aura, and it also gives Heatran an opening, putting it in range for something like Z Magma Storm or even Magma Storm out right now that you get a Toxic off on a well. And lo and behold, my second prediction was right as well. He goes for a knockoff. Yeah, he does 40% and I'm knocked off. It's not great, but it felt more okay than not. He proceeds to go for another knockoff, predicting a switch. He gets it, but I go Peck, so Earthquake would have been a lot better from his end. It was just kind of awkward switching around it before Gliscor's Toxic Orb was activated because I didn't want to switch Latias into a U-turn, but ultimately I got Gliscor in there on that turn, Toxic Orb activated, and then I doubled to Latias. He teleports, he brings in Cinderace. That's totally fine with me. U-turn can't do much over 55, so I'm okay just drifting off to slightly over half damage as he goes to what I believe is Blissey. And at this point, I had to go for Fog, figuring he's probably not toxic, but also toxic to Tran or Gliscor or Peck isn't great for him. He just goes for the teleport again, and then U-turn loops out into 55. So yeah, but right there, Roost, and that is totally okay with me, sequentially speaking. I feel a shock because I outdamaged Regenerator against the Slowking Galar. I go with the Clefable, knowing the future side is looming overhead, and I didn't feel like taking any more attacks while I wanted to get rocks up, so I actually get my rocks up. He gets the future set off for 40, and I'm like, okay, but that's actually fine. He's pretty weak to hazards. He relies on boots from Slow and Sind, so I knew if I could work my way around those, I was in pretty good shape, which opens up the game a bit later. Here, I scout. Instead of going Heatran, I go Latias on a Focus Blast, which worked for me. He didn't proceed to go Future Sight. I'm like, oh, damn, I thought I'd switch him out with Side Shock, out-damaging Regenerator, but that's fine. He now goes Slowbro. I'm like, okay, some good plays by the opponent. He doubles right back here. I didn't really understand that. I just was going to Roost here always, but I digress. This is totally fine with me. I get the Side Shock off for another 36 just to make sure I force this out. He goes for a Generator here. Now I go Heatran, knowing fully well that I can take advantage of this situation for once and for all. And I get a ton off on the Blissey, which is absolutely cool. Prevents him from teleporting out. Now he goes Slowbro. I'm like, oh, damn. This is brilliant. I'm going to force it to be really low, and I could potentially nuke it with Z. But he reveals to be Shed Shell Slowbro. Oh, no, no, no. That is a huge problem. All of a sudden, I am incapable of making progress with Heatran. I go for a Magma Gem here into the Cinderace for a nice 36%. I'm like, okay, if he's High Jump Kick, he's probably not going to click it here because I'm Protect, but I go Gliscor anyway to be safe. Taking 13 from U-turn, he goes Carp. Like, okay, so let's see if he's Defog card or Swords Dance card at this point. But he doubles the Slowbro, so I'm guessing it's Swords Dance. He didn't think he could break quite yet with Mega Latias being so healthy, which is fair. He's trying to bait me to stay in, but I'm not having that at this point in the game. I feel comfortable with my lines of play as they are. Now he goes Slowbro on Gliscor, and I'm like, okay, maybe he's baiting having Ice Beam, but I kind of doubt it at this point. I can still see as I switch here, and he just goes for a safe Future Sight, so I was like, okay, no big a dealio. He now goes Slowking Galar on the Scald. I don't get the burn, and I'm forced out by Future Sight, so it's chill. He goes Focus Blast again, predicting Heatran likely, and I take the Future Sight, and I'm just barely above half health. Now I go Roost, maybe a bit greedily, as he gets a free Sludge Bomb off, and he gets the Poison, which is absolutely going to be a limiting factor for this Latias, so not great for me, but I could double the Heatran here in the Future Sight, and maybe try and force slight progress. I actually do get a Magma Storm off on Slowbro again, but we know it's Shed Shell, and that is not a great look for me. And to add insult to injury, I missed a follow-up one as well as he goes Cinderace. And now, after taking that Future Sight, I'm like, I really don't think he's going to High Jump Kick. I still haven't revealed Toxic Blast, so it could be Protect, but he goes for it. He gets it right, and now I feel like I'm in a big hole. I lost Heatran for nothing. Not only did he have the Shed Shell type, but he also called my lack of Protect there. He went for the High Jump Kick and connected, so I'm not feeling too hot here. I feel like I'm pretty far behind this game, and I do not like that feeling at all. So at this point, I'm like, okay, he has a Landorus that's weakened in Toxic, so Zero Aura does pretty well. He doesn't have to know I'm not close combat with the Kartana. In fact, I still have Latias alive for that, so I should be okay. Emphasis on should, I'm not always going to be. And he's also locked to a fighting move, which I guess is okay too. I go for the Plasma Fist thinking he's not going to go Lando, and I was right. He actually goes to the Slowbro, takes 55%. Now I go Gliscor predicting the Landorus because he's going to expect that. And now here I find myself an opening to set up now that I know that I'm okay. He goes to the Kartana here as I go for the Swords Dance. That is all fine and well. He goes Swords Dance of his own, and I'm able to get off an Earthquake there for a nice 50%. Now I go Clefable, his Death Fodder here, and he goes for Z. Thankfully, he didn't go for Synth or anything like that, so I felt pretty comfortable. He's a +3 here, but it doesn't really matter. Mega Latias can easily take it out, but I know he's probably going to go to something like Slowking Galar or Latias or Blissey on it, so I get Gliscor, and sorry, I Swords Dance once. He goes Future Sight, I Swords Dance again. I should have Swords Dance again. He goes Blissey. Oh, I think I just Facade spam to try and catch the Lando T. And then I ultimately do catch it, so I kill that while being at +1, but taking a Future Sight at this 53, so it leaves me a bit above half. Now he goes Kartana, and I'm like, okay, that's fine. I live Leaf Blade here. I just don't want to get crit, so if I roost one more time, I think I'm out of crit range. Yeah, like this means I know that I crit here, and I think he's not going to Swords Dance again, so I'm okay roosting. See, I would live crit there barely, and now I'm comfortable enough to where I could probably just Earthquake him, I think. He Leaf Blades here again, no critical thankfully. 45, Earthquake takes him out. And now I'm outside of Cinderace range as well because of this. He's at 57, so it's chill with me. He goes Slowbro. I just roost here. I know he's not Ice Beam at this point in the game. And as you see there, Skull Alone does 53. So I'm comfortable getting to a position to where he's going to need absolute max damage to 2KO. And spoiler alert, that isn't even possible with this friend. I think he's like 0 special attack. So I actually always am able to tank 2 of them, which is cool. So yeah, I can +6 up. I don't mind Future Sight. It doesn't kill after Scald, and he slacks off there. And now here I just go for Earthquake, and I crit him at +5. It didn't matter. Scald after Future Sight didn't kill. As you see, it wasn't doing 60 ever. And I could just roost spammed up against that and won the game with Earthquake or Facade. So yeah, that was a pretty good game there. Gliscor had a great matchup, and I took advantage of it well. He was unfortunately forced to exhaust his Kartana, and from there, it was all downhill for Zagubu. But I felt pretty confident about this game. I think I played pretty nicely, and it was a good representation of the metagame in my opinion. Next up, we have my game against Faded Love, or Faded, my week 1 opponent. I think he was on Team West. Admittedly, I brought a team that had a bit more bulk. Corviknight plus Pex plus Blissey. The idea was that Faded isn't very good at playing long games, and I felt I could capitalize on that. Even if I fell behind early, the key was to just hold my hand strong and not necessarily misplay a ton, so I should be fine. But here's how the game went. He uses a bit more of an offensive team. Garchomp's a pretty massive threat to this team. Corviknight's not doing the most damage, so I don't really have many hard checks and counters to it. Unlike Skarmory, which could go for counter, or Whirlwind, that's obviously not within the cards for Corviknight, so not loving seeing the Chomp there, but everything else felt super manageable. Blissey plus Kartana for the Blissey plus Toxapex for the Grand. No matter what Grand set it is, Zapdos can't really do a ton to me, but if Blissey somehow goes down, that's a problem. And finally, Mega Lopunny, which I should contain with the Toxapex, barring any shenanigans. So there, I felt like this was pretty doable. We'll have to wait and see. Right off the bat, I'm going to go ahead and lead off with the Corviknight, and that's not a great lead for me. I'm scared of him being mixed. I'm scared of Z-Sets with Swords Dance. I just go for Brave Bird, do as much as I can, but I'll only do 33. I'm like, damn, that might be kind of fat. I don't love that. And then he goes Swords Dance, and I'm like, okay, I'll roost the rocks off it. I'm like, oh, I let you get a Swords Dance. That's not good. Now I go Landorus T here, and I'm fine with him getting max damage and killing. It wasn't like max either. It was like a slightly favorable roll for me. I had some bulk on this, I believe, but that's fine because now I can get a Toxic on that. But he goes Clef. Like, okay, now I'm kind of playing from behind here. He made some good plays, but that's fine. Let me go ahead and try and get my kill machines in. I go Lele here into Clef. He goes Ferrothorn, and right off the bat, I'm like, okay, bet. I'm Calm Mind Z fight, so it's looking pretty lit. We're popping, we're rocking, we're going back and forth with some great plays. IZ fight, but he goes Clefable, which really opens up the door for him to potentially check me or just minimize me as he fires off there. Now he has more room elsewhere. And I go Corviknight here onto the Ferrothorn, taking a Power Whip, which is fine. I get Rocky Helmet damage off on him. Admittedly, I feel a little behind because I wish I had Landorus T at this point. He goes Zapdos here, and I think I just go Roost. Yeah, that's fine with me. I got Blissey here in the back, which is cool. I should be able to check that. Volt Switch is a good play by the opponent, though, and he brings in Lopunny, so I'm like, oh, damn. It is Threat City on his side of the field. I go to Pex here in the U-turn. I take 12% with a crit. No big deal. He goes back to Zapdos. I'm like, okay, are you trying to threaten me out? How much can you actually even do to me? I'm like 55, 60? He volts, it does 52, 62 rather. So it's like a super offensive Zapdos. I'm like, okay. That's worth noting. I got to preserve the Blissey for that. He now goes to his Chomp. He goes Rocks as I go Toxic. Now, let me tell you, this was a really poor play on his end, in my opinion. I think he should have saved this to where he got slightly more dire position than tried to swoop the Swords Dance, because we saw how Corviknight was so scared of it to begin with. But I digress. That was still okay by him, but I always can just defog these off now, and he's on a timer, so I don't think it made much sense either. He now goes Zapdos. I go Corviknight. A bit of an aggressive double, but it worked out for him there for sure. I'm taking Rocks here. Volt Switch to 71. I'm like, okay, that's actually fine with me. I can just roost it off and then hopefully get a defog off later. He goes back to Chomp. I'm like, okay, this is actually a perfect Pokemon to defog off against. He goes Zapdos here. He's Pressure, which is cool, but I get the fog off, so he's just taking unnecessary damage while we defog, which works for me. Now I go back to Blissey because I'm kind of scared of this, and he goes Ferrothorn. I'm like, okay, no big dealio. I should be okay here. I just go for a soft boiled here, so he goes Spikes. I'm like, okay. Kind of annoying, but kind of doable. I Toxic here in case he goes to Zapdos. He just whips. That's totally fine with me. I've already lost my item anyway, and I can just soft boiled it off. Now he goes Thunder Wave. I'm like, oh, okay. I'll go Corviknight if you insist. And I do that on a Power Whip miss, which actually kind of helps me. Sorry, helped him because I'm Helmet, I believe, but I might have gotten it knocked off, actually. No, I haven't. I lied. He leaves there. Now I go back to Pex here, and Pex takes another Thunder Wave. He's just trying to paralyze everything with his Pharaoh, which it does make some sense. It's kind of wavy, if you will. He goes Zapdos as I Toxic here, but I get parried. I'm like, oh my goodness. So if this gets Toxic here, then all of a sudden he's on a timer. I could just like recover every time he goes it on Corviknight or on Toxapex, and he can't break through. Doesn't really threaten my Blissey anymore. But this being powered was huge because otherwise I just sat there all day and just spammed Volt Twitch against my team with Landorus T-Gon. And that was a problem because putting it on a timer, forcing secondary moves and other strategies would have been huge for me. But it's fine. I might be able to still manage this game, even if that was really unfortunate there. Volt Switch here, and now he goes Ferrothorn as I try and get healed up. Unfortunately, I don't get healed up. He now goes back to Zapdos as I believe I try and heal up, and I do heal up this time. Yep, I'm up to 92 here. And he goes Volt Switch in this turn, and he gets a critical hit with max damage, by the way, to get the kill there. And now the game's over because I needed Pex for everything. And this just grinds my gears because, like, the thing is that he let his two progress makers, his Garchomp and his Zapdos, basically eat Toxic for nothing. And it kind of went from a really favorable position to him. So if I hit both those, then I was in a really favorable position. But that's the game sometimes. You got to give props to Faden for just playing what he thought his outs were anyway. Pretty unfortunate. It broke my win streak in National Dex. But I started off again with the game against the Goober. From there, the game's over. I can't win no matter what I do. I could just skip through the rest here. But yeah, lo and behold, without Toxapex, my Mega Lopunny counter, I lose to Mega Lopunny. So yeah, that was that. Good game, well played. I hope you guys enjoyed. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I hope you all have a great day. All right, talk to you later. Bye-bye.